All right, welcome back. We just talked about this in the A block. We have breaking news coming back here. According to President Trump, or according to President Trump's Truth Social, I should say, it does appear that the former president has been indicted on the documents case. Here is the most recent post from former President Trump. This is just a couple minutes ago. The corrupt Biden administration has informed my attorneys that I have been indicted, seemingly over the boxes hoax. Even though Joe Biden has 1,850 boxes at the University of Delaware, additional boxes in Chinatown, D.C., with even more boxes at the University of Pennsylvania, and documents strewn all over his garage floor where he parks his Corvette, and which is, quote, secured, if we can pull the rest of it back up, or I think I have the rest of it right here, by only a garage door that is paper thin and then open much of the time. That was the rest of that. He has been summoned to appear at a federal courthouse in Miami. So they have, this is going to be Tuesday at 3. This is all coming into me at the same time. Summoned to appear in Miami Tuesday at 3 p.m. at the federal courthouse there. You remember yesterday we talked about how they had this going on in Washington, but they had also kind of brought in a grand jury in South Florida as well. It sounds like the former president is going to be indicted in Miami. He has to appear there Tuesday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So that obviously is going to be a big moment. We talked earlier today, he's already been indicted here in New York on charges that are flatly ridiculous. And there were questions about prosecutorial misconduct with Alvin Bragg. There are many allegations of prosecutorial misconduct in this case as well, the Jack Smith special counsel case. This is an administration that is desperate to throw this man in prison by any means necessary. This is a DOJ that is so partisan they can overlook almost anything if one of their teammates does it. But if it's former President Trump, who is the biggest threat to them, they can do what they please, and they can turn something very small into something much bigger. They're talking about charges of espionage against the former president. We're going to have Rick Gates coming up here in just a couple of minutes. Speaking of prosecutorial misconduct in this case, I want to go back and play the soundbite from Tim Parlator, who is one of former President Trump's former attorneys who willfully went in front of the grand jury to testify. Let's go ahead and play that, and you'll kind of get a picture here of what they're able to do, what they're capable of in order to try and get this indictment that they've just gotten.
I was really stunned by what I saw in the grand jury room by the conduct of the prosecutors. It's the kind of thing that if that had happened in a trial court, the judge would have immediately stopped everything, probably declared a mistrial. And it's the kind of thing that, quite frankly, an attorney, a prosecuting attorney who willfully does that type of thing would potentially face discipline. And I think that they probably will when this case comes out.
Something like that. Not that you're surprised. We're going to bring in Rick Gates now, worked with former President Trump in the administration. Sir, it's good to have you on. You're more than aware of what this Department of Justice is capable of. What's your response?
Rob, good to be with you. One, not surprising, as we know, but absolutely diabolical, corrupt beyond belief. It brings back so many memories of the way that we were all treated during the Mueller probe. I hate to see what, former President Trump's going to have to go through just through this. But I think at the end of the day, what I'm most interested in seeing is how much support he gets from this, how many people gravitate as a result of seeing the continued persistent corruption of the Department of Justice, FBI. You could throw it all in there. It's amazing that it takes less than a year from the time that the president was under, subject to this, but yet Hunter Biden, after 4 years, they still can't manage to muster a simple indictment against him when most of the world, if not the entire world, knows the alleged corrupt activity he's participated in. It just goes to show, it's going to be a continued pattern of two systems of justice, hypocrisy, and it's going to, I think, turn the American people certainly against this idea that government is actually working for them. They can't trust people inside government.
Anybody with a functioning mind has a healthy skepticism of any government. You should. If you look at history, if you know history, you know what government is capable of and why it was so scary to the men that founded this country and why they set up the system the way it was. And after 250 years, they figured out a way to corrupt what seemed to be the best system we had ever created. This system, though, the way this now works, what we've learned in the last 6 years about how our country works, what Donald Trump, whether he meant to or not, exposed about how this functions, about what they were so afraid of when he came into Washington, when somebody that wasn't handpicked by this system, by this machine, came in and took control of that machine. It scared the hell out of the people that work in establishment Washington. And you've watched as they have all unified in a way that's just been, it's been quite disoriented for most of us to see how politics has changed in this country and how all of this has just worked to kill this man, to destroy this man in any way possible is the only mission at hand. And what they can ignore, what they're ignoring about former President Biden as we speak, these are real allegations. I mean, just because the media is not covering them doesn't make these not real, doesn't make them not credible. And the fact that nobody's paying attention to them and that former President Trump is indicted for this is terrifying.
Well, when you look everybody expected, President Trump to lose in 2016. And when he came to power, he exposed so much of the corruption there. And honestly, not just with Democrats as well, but he underscored the collusion that happens with the elites in Washington, D.C. And he started pulling away at that and started going after them. And they fought back. And obviously, they fought back with a lot of power. I mean, look what's going to happen, moving forward. They are going to go after him. They're going to try to leverage him in every possible way. They're going to attack his family. They're going to do the most impossible things to him, the absolute grotesque things in terms of what the law allows, whether it's the bail process or, whether it's holding. Hopefully, as he got in New York, some exceptions, in terms of being a former president. I don't think he's going to see those same exceptions at the federal level. Obviously, it's unprecedented, but the way that they are going to treat him, what they're going to do to him is going to be absolutely incredibly wrong. And I hope the American people see that. I just want them to see the transparency, have transparency in this and see this for what it really is, because this could happen to anybody across the board, now even a former president.
Yeah. And be fully aware that the people that sit in Washington and scream democracy all the time care less about democracy than anyone else in this country. It is just a tool for them. It's one of their many tools to try and convince you that they're on your side while they try and remove as many of your freedoms as they can and wrangle control of this country. It is all a lie. And I think people really need to understand that. People really need to be opening their eyes in this moment. I think former President Trump is going to help them do that. And what we see here on Tuesday. We've Rick Gates, stand by for us if you could. And thank you so much. I want to go to Matt Gaetz, who's joining us, I believe, on the phone. Congressman, are you there?
Yeah, Rob, thanks for having me on this ominous evening for our country. I spoke with President Trump yesterday. This is really something that reflects the most severe election interference on the part of the federal government that we've ever seen. And keep in mind, we've already uncovered this year that the CIA was actively involved in election interference in the last campaign, trying to suppress the Hunter Biden laptop story. And here you have the Department of Justice taking literally an indictment of a former president as a tool to resolve a dispute with the archivist. This after Joe Biden has had classified documents in his possession since 1974. Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, Mike Pence, almost everywhere that we looked, we saw that this was a broken system. And then yet to use the power of criminal process to plow our country into the depths of the perceived third world is deeply, deeply troubling.
The idea that they're going to use, I think, now we don't know the details of the charges. The former president has just said on Truth Social that he has been indicted. He's been informed that he has been indicted and he has to be in court on Tuesday. But the idea that they're going to try and get potentially an espionage charge here because they need a way, Congressman, to get around the fact that he can declassify documents. So they're obviously looking for any way. I mean, it's like, we might not have a crime yet, so we need to figure out a way to make this a crime. So let's use espionage, which is a very serious, far greater crime than anything alleged of former President Trump, that they're going to bend that to make it this way. And the fact that they can ignore what Hillary did when they subpoenaed her for her misuse of classified documents. I mean, what Hillary is alleged to have committed was horrifying. They had no interest in that whatsoever. What John Kerry did during the transition and under the Trump administration was a grievous crime that was ignored. What current President Biden has been up to with all of these various countries, the allegations of corruption, the millions of dollars from several credible whistleblowers. They can ignore all of this and do this at the same time. People have to see this.
Yeah, it's quite something that we're living in a time and place where you can learn that then Vice President Biden was accused of taking a $5 million bribe with some pretty strong receipts regarding bank accounts and individuals involved in a specific deliverable for these corrupt people paying the bribes. And no one really believes that's going to be charged, right?
Right.
But then here we are with a records dispute rising to the level of criminal process. And the bizarre thing, Rob, is that it's not even the first time the left and the media have falsely accused President Trump of violating the Espionage Act.
Right.
You know, I remember Eric Swalwell being endlessly platformed on MSNBC and CNN to say that President Trump was a Russian agent. Now, apparently, he's violated the Espionage Act. You know, I think that on a lot of these records things, there's probably not a presidential library in America, certainly not some, you know, where you couldn't find some technical lack of compliance with some record policy, but for an indictment to be used as the tool clearly showcases that this is about the 2024 election. Does anyone watching really believe this would be happening to Trump if he weren't running again and if he weren't winning as the leading Republican candidate?
Yeah, they wouldn't care. If he was just playing golf and not coming back, they wouldn't care at all. I want to read, stay with us, Congressman, for just 1 second. I want to read all the information that the former president has brought out. Guys, I want to flip it back to the first page. I want to give everybody the whole thing at the same time. The corrupt Biden administration has informed my attorneys that I have been indicted, seemingly over the boxes hoax, even though Joe Biden has 1,850 boxes at the University of Delaware, additional boxes in Chinatown, D.C., with even more boxes at the University of Pennsylvania, and documents strewn all over his garage floor where he parks his Corvette, and which is secured by only a garage door that is paper thin and open much of the time. His second message here on Truth Social says, I have been summoned to appear at the federal courthouse in Miami on Tuesday at 3 p.m. I never thought it possible that such a thing could happen to a former president of the United States who received far more votes than any sitting president in the history of the country, and is currently leading by far all candidates, both Democrat and Republican, in polls of the 2024 presidential election. He says, I am an innocent man. And then on the third one, he says, this is indeed a dark day in the United States of America. We are a country in serious and rapid decline, but together we will make America great again. Congressman, it's important to note this is an indictment. As they famously say, you can indict a ham sandwich. I can't fathom they're going to have much luck with this as it moves forward. And what about all the allegations of prosecutorial misconduct that we've seen just in this case alone?
Yeah, the prosecutor seems to be someone with an axe to grind. It seems to be why that prosecutor was selected for this purpose. If you look at some of the prior political activity and connection to left-leaning political figures and groups, this was a hit job. And it is stunning to think about that courthouse in Miami bearing out the scene on Tuesday where Donald Trump will present himself. I believe that's the same federal courthouse where they held Manuel Noriega, the former dictator of Panama. And then to think we would visit this harm in my state, on our country. It is such an abuse of federal power. We should immediately be holding congressional hearings on this to ascertain by what authority was this Jack Smith individual kind of screened and reviewed for bias, and to what extent were civil liberties potentially violated. We know in the New York Alvin Bragg case that Mark Pomerantz pled the fifth when asked whether or not he broke any laws when trying to get Trump.
We've got some more details here, Congressman. The former president's been indicted on at least 7 federal charges, including illegal retention of classified documents, obstruction, and on conspiracy. So the first one, illegal retention of classified documents. Okay, fine. So let's charge President Biden with the same thing. Let's charge Mike Pence with the same thing. In fact, it's even worse because neither of them could declassify the documents that they've taken. But we also have obstruction and we have conspiracy. Do you have any clarity on what they're going to try and do with conspiracy here? I mean, the obstruction is obvious. They think that's because he slow walked the return of them. He wasn't giving them back as fast as they wanted. What do you think conspiracy means in this thing?
Well, as to the obstruction, it's a common theme from the Department of Justice when they've got a weak underlying matter to kind of layer in obstruction to try to bring this air of criminality over what would otherwise be a non-criminal negotiation or interaction with the compliance with the Federal Presidential Records Act. Yeah. And keep in mind, there's no Vice Presidential Records Act. President Trump had more authority to have these records, certainly, than Joe Biden did as the former vice president. And so if there's legal ground to stand on, these are not equivalencies. President Trump on far better legal ground. I think you'll probably find a pretty favorable jury in Miami-Dade County. President Trump's got a lot of fans down there, and so I think that's a real risk for the Department of Justice that they weren't able to bring these charges in Washington, D.C. And, we'll have to read the indictment and see what the conspiracy charge is. But, as it relates to really what are the underlying predicate criminal acts to establish a conspiracy, it's pattern and course for when the facts are weak, like we saw in the Mueller report.
Yeah. Congressman, we appreciate you coming on. We're going to keep on this, and we thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rob.